Hi, I'm Jeremy Crosby.
And I'm Nick Boucher. We're the hosts for the program that's all about your city, Talking Fitchburg.
Every day, we pull together the news, events, and information you need to stay on top of what's happening in the city of Fitchburg.
Find Talking Fitchburg on cable TV, Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and our live stream on the web. Plus, you can view all our headlines and stories on Facebook, YouTube, and our video on demand service. This is your city.
Keep up with Talking Fitchburg and the issues that affect you and your neighbors.
Want to know what's happening in your city? Get Notify Me messages from the City of Fitchburg. Visit fitchburgwi.gov on your computer or mobile device and select the big Notify Me button on the left. Enter your email and/or phone number, whichever is best for you to get notifications. Scroll down the list and select all the topics you're interested in to receive email or text messages about. You'll be notified every time one of your topics is updated. Sign up for Notify Me, one more way to keep up with your Fitchburg government.
Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the like sign. The ayes have it. Item number 3, public appearances for non-agenda items, and we have an empty room, I think. Unless.
We don't have anything. That's, Chris is joining us.
Okay.
Item number 2.
Okay, very good. So being there's no one here, we'll assume there's nothing for item 3. Agenda review. Deanna, please.
There's no changes to the agenda. We are first going to review a rezone request as a referral to Plan Commission for a property in the rural area. Next, we have Chris Lights with the city assessor, and he's up here already on deck for item B. Item C is Ben Schulte with the city engineering office, and he's going to have a discussion about dredge materials. And then finally, I have some discussion points with you all regarding the comp plan preparation.
Okay, thank you, Deanna. Item 5A, a rezone request RZ 2572-24, requested by Brian, and I'm not sure how to pronounce that last name.
Brian Strock. Okay, so this
Deanna.
This is a rezone request, and it is a rezone to request. It's a rezone off of Whalen Road, and I'm just going to get my notes up here.
5539 Whalen.
Yep. This is an existing residential parcel, and I guess I probably should bring up my map here so I can orientate you all. Down on Whalen Road. Okay, can you help me out here, Scott? I appreciate it. All right, so this is the property in question, Fish Hatchery. If you could follow my cursor, and Whalen Road, this is the property in question. It is an existing low-density residential parcel here, and then there is another parcel to the west, which is agricultural transition, and then the parcel to the east and south is exclusive ag. So the request before you is a rezone request to transfer part of the land from the AX parcel and then from the AT parcel to expand the low-density residential parcel. So it's an expansion of the low density. So technically what the rezone request is for these areas right here to become low-density residential. And then because the remainder parcel to the west is less than 35 acres. 35 acres is our magic number for AT and AX. the request is to rezone the remainder of the parcel to the west to AS, or small lot.
Ag small.
Yep.
Okay,
So that's the gist of the, and Mr. Gary Gorman is in the room too. If there's specific questions, but that's the request to rezone those parcels of land plus this one. And staff does recommend approval with the 5 conditions.
Okay. And rezoning the ag transitional is a zoning code that we no longer use. We have some of it, but we no longer
We
use it.
certainly do have some of it.
It was used before, but we no longer use it, so. Committee, any questions for the committee?
Yeah, I'm sure there's lots of questions.
Nicole?
So for we're rezoning for the west lot from AX to AS, is that correct?
That is correct.
Are there like fundamentally different things that you cannot do on AS that you could on AX or vice versa?
It's like lot size, literally, I think it boils down to.
There are different permitted and conditional uses in the two. Both are agricultural orientated zoning districts, but they are 2 different districts, and I couldn't list off all the differences right now.
The big difference is ag small does not allow any residential buildings on it.
That's true.
So if you wanted to have a farmette there, you could not have a house. You could have a farm building, but you could not have a home.
Can you have a home on AX?
Yes,
Depends.
Okay.
Well, it depends.
in some cases,
Yes.
yes.
Enough space.
If you have 35 acres, yes,
Yeah.
you can. Or 35 after the
After the home would be.
the utility easements come out and everything, you have to have 35 when you're left.
Okay. Thank you.
Utility easements count as a deduction from your acreage?
Yes. Yep. You have to have 35 after all that's done.
I mean, are you talking road right-of-way dedications or
Yes, I am.
utility easements?
Yes, I am. No, road dedication.
Road dedicated, okay.
Okay. Any other committee questions?
So we're not looking at a proposal to combine the existing house lot and the now parcels surrounding it through one CSM. We're looking to make an entirely new lot out of the perimeter?
No. So our land division code allows the transfer of land between abutting properties. So that's what's happening here. Staff requested a CSM. The property owner chose not to do a CSM and to transfer these lands from the parcels to attach it to the existing low-density residential one.
And the existing parcel had a house on it that the Gorman family replaced. The existing parcel that house was moved there back in the late 50s, if I remember right, because I remember watching it be moved there. It's one of the first ones I ever saw. So that came out of Oregon. Was the parish house. So anyway.
So you're talking about the statute that refers to transfer of lands between adjacent landowners, but this is the same landowner. I don't know that statute can apply. I think that's sort of like a merger.
Yeah, well, technically, there are different owners in here. That one's Gary Gorman, and this one is Gary Gorman Trust, and then this one is a different property. So.
Any other committee questions? I'll ask, Mr. Gorman wants to speak, so I'll ask him to come up next. If we no other committee questions at the time, after Gary speaks, we can, if you have questions, we'll talk about it. Gary, please.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. Let me give you a little bit of background. Mr. Jones kind of referenced it, but it was actually 1963 after the parish house burned down. My Uncle Thomas moved the former priest house out to our family farm. My grandmother gave him 1.4 acres to move the house to. The house was there for almost 60 years, series of different owners. It came up for sale roughly 2 years ago. I bought it. My thought was that my kids could stay there when they came back. the house was in rough shape. So the more we looked at it, I thought, I've got to replace this house. So we did get a building permit for the new house. And I've got a letter from Jack Pearson, the building inspector, that we got a building permit May 23, May of 2023. The issue came up when halfway through construction, my wife said, you know what? We should have a place to store all the farm equipment that's sitting around and her horse carriage buggies. And so I said, okay, we'll expand the garage. And so I did that. Our contractor didn't think we need a separate building permit because it was attached to the garage. Turned out that was a mistake. So then that larger attached garage extended over the southern boundary. I wasn't too upset about that because I owned the land adjacent to it. And it extended like 20 feet beyond the southern boundary of the old 1963 lot. Turns out that triggered the need for a zoning change, and then, as staff has pointed out, unbeknownst to me, there was actually a separate legal parcel that was 20 acres that was part of the much larger farm that I own. And that then is less than the 35 acres required, even though that 20 acres has been defined as a parcel for years. I am not trying to build more houses. I'm not trying to develop the land. We're just trying to comply with the zoning codes. The two mistakes that I made, or my contractor made, is we should have gone back and got a modification to the building permit or even a separate building permit when we expanded the garage. Guilty as charged. And again, I didn't think it was a big deal that we extended over the southern property line. There is a statute, and I researched it, by the way, that if you own, same owner owns adjacent properties, you can do a lot line adjustment. That's what we're proposing to do. I did object to a certified survey map that would have encompassed 70 acres of farmland. I thought that was an extreme response to really about 25 feet of movement from, the adjacent farm that I own to comply with the zoning and setback for the larger building that we built. So that's it. Happy to answer any questions, but I'm not trying to develop the farm. I'm really not, if that's a concern.
Thank you, Gary. Any questions for Gary?
Not for Gary, but you
Thank
don't
you,
have
Gary.
to do a CSM, and like the remainder of the 76 acres can stay as lands, and you're just doing a CSM of this lot. You don't have to do a CSM of the whole parent parcel.
No, I disagree. In our code, we have to do a CSM of all of the parcels under the same ownership.
Okay.
I would like to make a motion to approve rezone RZ-2572-24.
Second.
There's been a motion made and seconded.
Shelley had some questions.
Shelley, question? I'm sorry.
I just had one question as to the, hold on, Scott's going to yell at me.
Oop, you got to turn it on again. One more time.
There it is.
There you go.
Okay. On the numbered conditions for it, number 4 is that the new lot has to conform to RL. Does anything need to be stated for now the new small lot agriculture?
Yeah, I probably should have put something in there. I didn't consider it.
Okay.
If you would like to, if you like to make an amendment that the other lot must comply to AS, that would be a just fine amendment.
Okay. I will make an amendment that.
Yep, and you can just make a friendly amendment as long as your first and second agree.
Right.
Do the first and second agree.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Then it's included.
Okay.
And it does. What does that really?
What,
Well, it was kind of a technical question on my part, but apparently it does have a substantive effect. So it's just, since the conditions say that the one lot has to comply with all requirements, I questioned if we need to also say the same for the
AS lot.
okay. Very good. Thank
And
you.
as it is, the AS lot is just going to stay as it is anyways. It'll just stay in farmland, so I don't think there's any change or.
It's fine with me.
Okay. Any other questions?
I got a question. Just matter of fact, just looking here, your southern line is, you own land beyond the southern border of this small ag?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So wouldn't you have been able, so this is an individual parcel? It's a separate parcel?
The parcel was created by Meets and Bounds in 1963.
Okay. Because I know you own land further south of that, and you could have picked up another 2 acres or 20 acres to get 35, easy enough.
Could have, to be honest, I didn't think I had to do that. I thought I could just do a simple lot line adjustment.
Yeah, no problem, yeah.
Okay, there's been a motion made and seconded. Any other questions? If not, I'll call for a motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, a like sign. The ayes have it, motion is carried. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
Okay. Item B is the rural area assessment discussion. City assessor. Welcome.
There we go. Thank you. Hi, everybody. You may or may not know me, but I'm the city assessor here for the city of Fitchburg. My name is Chris Leeds. I just want to stop by and let you all know we're doing a comprehensive review of a number of properties that we haven't been to since 2019, and a lot of those are in the rural area. Some subdivisions, some farm properties. So, just wanted to give you a heads up. You may see some of my staff out and about. They'll be wearing, they'll have a city car. They'll have usually high-vis vests on, and they'll have some sort of identification. So, just so you all are aware. We sent out letters trying to request inspections, and if we didn't hear back, that's fine. We just will stop out when it's convenient for us, just so you're all aware. So happy to entertain any other questions you all have, but I just figured it would be wise to just pop in and let you guys know. So,
I got a question.
Sure.
I got a question. You offer 3 different options.
Yep.
Walk around, in-house visit,
Yep.
or off of satellite imagery.
Yeah.
The satellite imagery one is one that I've often wondered about. How accurate are you with that?
So that's a good question. So we'll typically take kind of a hybrid approach between the two. So say, we never heard back from you, and we decided, well, we're typically always going to come out and do an exterior walk around when we're in the area, unless you specifically call and say, hey, we don't want you here, which is certainly within your rights as well. But we would do that. Our best bet is going to be to go walk around. Now, if we can't get onto the property for some reason, or say you've got, some farm buildings kind of tucked back off the road, like we're not going to go, barging through the woods or anything like that to get to certain places. So in that case, then we'd use satellite imagery, and those are pretty good. Typically, Deanna, you might know more about this than I do, but usually they can get within a few feet of where we need to. So the difference is going to be somewhat small, and maybe compared to what we might actually measure with tape versus if we do it online. So they're fairly consistent.
Chris, you guys were at my house today, and unfortunately, I wasn't there.
Oh, sure.
And my wife did not feel comfortable.
Understandable.
So she gave the phone to your guys, and I gave them my number and told them to come back when I was there.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, and that's, part of the process. It can often be that way where people don't expect us often enough. So that's why I figured I'd stop out here. But we just started looking today. Was the first day where we really started looking around down in the rural area, and I figured I would try and come in and let you guys know. So that way, at least, if anybody hear from anybody, you put the word out there. So.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Chris?
Make a comment here. I'm aware of 2 visits, and I will have to tell you that in both cases, the residents were extremely pleased with the courtesy and the professionalism that your people were there.
Glad to hear it.
So that's important to keep that bridge going with a taxation type of
for sure.
job.
Yeah, for sure.
Nicole,
Thanks.
you had a question.
Mine's not as nice as Roger's. It's not mean, though. So I guess my general question was if folks have questions or issues with their assessment, do they come to the Board of Review like anybody else does in the next year, or
Call
does this
us
follow?
first. So right now,
Yeah.
we're in the early stages of working on our 2025 assessment roll. So we're working on setting our preliminary values. The first step in that case would be, open book. It's much less formal than like board of review. So you'll get a notice sometime next spring, probably May, with a value. If you get it, you have any questions, just give us a call first. If there's still some sort of a disagreement, board of review is an option. But open book's generally pretty informative, where you can sit down with one of our staff and go through everything. So, yeah.
Any other questions from the committee? If not, thank you,
All right.
Chris.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Yep, you also. Item C, dredge materials, discussion with city engineering, environmental.
First of all, thanks for your time here today. I'm not at this committee often, so for those that don't know, my name is Ben Schulte. I'm one of the environmental engineers at the city, and I'm really here to get feedback and comments and thoughts from you all just regarding this topic of beneficial reuse of dredged material. So I'll make it brief and we can get into some discussion, but essentially the city has dozens and dozens of these stormwater retention ponds. Every 20 or so years, they do need to be dredged out. So that basically means all that decomposing leaves, plant matter, soil that kind of settles in at the bottom of these ponds has to be dug out. It recently came to my attention that golf courses and apparently some agricultural lands have explored the possibility of using this material essentially as a soil amendment because it's going to be high in phosphorus and nitrogen. Some of the concerns, of course, that I would immediately have is what else is in there besides the phosphorus and the nitrogen and the good stuff. Of course, a lot of this stuff could be coming off of roads and so forth. So definitely a concern there. But I will add that the city does have to test this material, regardless of where it's going. So far, it looks like the material coming out of these ponds is really pretty clean. So I guess the big question is, do you feel that anyone would be interested in exploring this topic more? Do you think there's anyone in the community that would say, the city's got all this material right now, we just send it with the contractor and they get rid of it. So no one's really benefiting for it, but just wanted to bring this up as a potential opportunity. Maybe there'd be some interest and maybe we could have a win-win with reusing some of this material for a good purpose. So like I said, at this point, I haven't done a ton of research into it yet. Wanted to kind of bring it to you guys to just kind of get a high-level feedback before, was devoting more time to it. But I guess with that, does anyone have any thoughts? Do you think there'd be interest in exploring this?
What time of year do you go in and clean out? Is it like right now after the crops are off the fields? Because I think that would be like a timing.
Sure. Typically, with these dredging projects, we give the contractor a pretty long window to do it, just to try to get better prices. But certainly that's, if it only works during a certain period of year, we could require that the work is done during that period of time.
Yeah, I think there's like a window of opportunity.
I have a question on that. You say the contractors just get rid of it?
Yeah, so it kind of depends.
Where does that go?
Yeah, so like I said, we do test it. If there was an instance where we found that there were some heavy metals, it actually has to go to a special landfill. That hasn't happened yet. So basically, as long as the test levels show that, hey, we're not over these values for these various contaminants, the contractor basically can take it off site to do with what they want. Oftentimes, there is an opportunity to just have them spread the material just right next to where they dredged it out. That's really kind of the cheapest option, but, then a lot of our ponds are in some areas where there's some decent, native vegetation established. So then you're looking at the added cost of, having to replant and potentially regrade some things. But in the past, the contractor just has to provide a location to the city, because we, as the sediment manager, we have to kind of know where the stuff is going. But as long as it doesn't have those heavy metals, they can kind of take it and just get it off the site. So this would be kind of, instead of having them, take it off site to do with what they want, maybe there is interest to actually use that material for someone's agricultural land.
How does, if it's clean after you test it, how does it differ from all the soil that's at the recycling center?
Oh, the compost?
Yeah.
That's a good question that I'll write down. The dredged material is almost kind of like a wet compost, or something that's been composted but in a wet environment. So it is going to be different, just chemical composition wise. Certainly the stuff that is at the recycling site, you're not going to worry about heavy metals or contamination, because it's just yard waste, basically brush, or I should say yard waste, because it's not supposed to be brush, but yard waste that has been ground down and then just left to compost. Whereas here, it's probably, of course, you're getting leaves and all the cattails and other vegetation that grow and die, and then whatever kind of runs off, adjacent fields or open areas, stuff off of roads. So the composition is slightly, it is different.
So you don't think it could be added to the compost, or at least another pile there, so that it could be used for the whole community?
Well, unfortunately, I think we're just getting a little low on space out there. And certainly maybe if it was a smaller pond, that could be done. But for example, McKee Farms Park has a couple big ponds that probably should be dredged within the next 5 years or so, and that's going to be a pretty significant amount of material that, and it's pretty wet. I mean, you could set it aside and let it dry and then truck it somewhere else. But I think the main thing there is just the lack of space that we're running into there.
Yeah, your compost piles you don't have a lot of space there. You're running out of room quick.
Yeah, yeah.
Ben, I have I think on some of the lighter soils, it might work as a good soil builder. The fact that it's a wet product, depending on the time of year and the crops, might be an issue, but I think there may be some interest
Okay.
in it. So, the timing is going to be the biggest issue. I know you did Swan Creek, the pond in Swan Creek, and that was done in the wintertime.
Right.
And I also had a question after you did that. Did they restock that with fish? Because there were fish in there.
Yeah, so fish in stormwater ponds is just kind of funny because, to my knowledge, no pond in Fitchburg has ever been stocked, but somehow, I don't care which one you go to, there's probably fish in it.
I know the one down here.
Yeah, so it's, ducks or birds bringing in eggs. Some of the ponds may be connected to waterways that do have fish, and they can, maybe in a flooding event, be able to travel up there. But yeah, it is funny because, I mean, there are some nice fish in some of the ponds, like game fish. The Quarry Ridge Pond, where the mountain biking trail is, see people fishing out there all the time and catching, largemouth, smallmouth bass. But
there's not heavy metals in it. You've tested it, so they're safe to eat.
I probably wouldn't eat anything out of a stormwater pond, but
I mean, me neither. But hey,
but for catch and release, that's funny. It's funny.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, some of the ponds are spring fed too, so.
Exactly.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah, some are spring fed, so Swan Creek is.
I have a quick question on the testing, if I may.
Sure, Nicole. Yeah.
Okay, I do like that though. So I just wanted to understand, we brought up heavy metals, but is the byproduct also tested for forever chemicals?
And that brings up a good point, because I think if we did pursue this, we would test for other things other than what we just have to per DNR. I mean, I would think we would want to know what kind of a sodium chloride content. I mean, that's not going to be good if there's a lot of salt in it.
PFAS also.
Yeah, so there was an article in the Times, I remembered reading it in August, and I think Texas, Maine, Michigan, New York, and Tennessee have had cases where some of these byproducts are used in farming, and then they create like unhealthy situations because they have high levels of PFAS, and it's just been linked to some questionable things. So clearly would want to understand, Ben, I think you do a fantastic job in making sure we understand the safety regulations. Would also want to understand if there's any additional cost with more of those, that testing and things like that.
Yeah, and the hope would be, because I would definitely say we should do, if there's interest, we want to do those additional tests. But I think, that the extra cost for the tests could be offset by being able to bring the material somewhere closer potentially, but then also you have someone in the community that's actually getting a benefit from it.
For sure. I think that's very fair. Thanks.
Okay, any other questions from the committee?
I have a question about, in a lot of the large agricultural land in Pittsburgh, it's gotten more and more with technology to where fertilizers are pretty much pinpointed to the types of soil. And, I look at this as it's fine, but if it costs for testing versus benefit, have you reached out to any of those farm agencies at all? I don't know if there's any window there for you.
Okay, no, that's a good suggestion. I have not. Yeah, I mean, if we found out that, oh geez, it's going to cost just a crazy amount to do all these tests, then maybe it's not such a good idea. But
well, a lot of the farmers are looking for productivity in their to pay for the time and fuel that they put into the land. I think that's a huge issue. I don't know how you address that, and
I guess I will say my thought would be, since the city is doing this testing already, that the city would be the one that would incur the costs for the tests. So any of the testing would be done as part of the testing that the city has to do anyways. So that wasn't my, I guess, thought of how this could potentially work. I would see the city bearing those costs.
And you get a lot of these ponds, and every location is different.
And that's another good point. So
where you get a lot of road salt, and the treatments off the road goes into the pond.
So the city's got to keep on the maintenance schedule, basically dredge about 2 ponds a year going forward. So you might get exactly what you're saying, where maybe there's a year where we do the tests and oh geez, yeah, I mean we can't, this has to go to a landfill, and it doesn't work out that year. But this is going to be the pond dredging is something that the city of Fitchburg is going to be doing for the foreseeable future. So maybe there's years where that opportunity doesn't exist, but other years you got a cleaner pond or something where hey, this material actually might be pretty useful to people. So I think it's definitely a very case by case situation. But I guess what I'm kind of getting here is there could potentially be interest, and it would be worth doing a little bit more due diligence, kind of background work to see what that process would actually look like, and then maybe come back later with a little bit more of a advanced, concept worked out with some of the more other details addressed, and then maybe get some more feedback at that point. Of course, there's other concerns besides the contaminants. So I think I said that golf courses do this sometimes, and with them, their concern is weed seeds. There could definitely be weed seeds in there. So, certainly there are concerns that, need to be brought to.
Yeah, I do know that it also draws in a lot of migratory birds. So you get
interesting.
like the issues they've had, like with Yahara Golf Course there, and trying to manage that. And also, have you ever reached out to any pond restoration companies? I know my sister has a pond that she's spent a lot of money on restoring and stocks it with fish now. But, some of those ponds maybe could be used for recreational purposes too. I don't know if there's any look at that.
Yeah, I think there's maybe some concerns with promoting recreational activities on the stormwater utility ponds just due to, potential safety concerns with
liability.
What someone could, fall in, and, that certainly would not be a good thing. So I think in general, I think the pond's recreational benefits may be more of just a nice scenic place to walk around with maybe some nice, wildlife and vegetation that supports wildlife habitat more so than people being on the water. Although, like I said, people have been on canoes in Quarry Ridge Pond and, fishing off that, and,
Cool. Thank you, Ben. Any other questions? Roger.
Change of subject. We had a terrible problem this year at the corner of M and Fitchburg Road with a runoff. And the engineering, were you involved in the engineering of that? Repair?
Oh, the ditch cleaning? Yeah. Sure, yeah, I knew about it. Yeah, I wouldn't say it was an engineered fix. It was more of just trying to restore the ditch to what we thought it had been previously. But yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, what I was wondering was that was a serious problem.
Yeah, it happened a few times.
That wiped out that whole corner, the road, the ditch, everything when we had that. And I think you've put a culvert under Fitchburg Road.
There's a new one under there.
To the east, and then the ditch goes off in towards M, and then follows M. Do we have confidence that engineering with the water velocity that's coming off of that farmland, that's going to continue to work? Have you looked at that volume that comes off of there to determine the size of the? I'm sure you probably have the size of the culvert and everything.
Yeah, we've kind of delineated that drainage area to figure out what the flows are going to be through there. Certainly it's an area that we're still looking at and trying to get some different alternatives worked out. Ideally, you'd be able to get that water, I think. So I guess I'll just back up. There's basically an agricultural ditch that runs north-south just east of Fitchburg Road, and then that ties into the ditch water from M, and then it continues south under M. I think ideally you could get water directed into that agricultural ditch further to the north, so it's not even going down Fitchburg Road. It has been a little bit of a challenge to try to figure out how to get the water there. The ATC has some pretty big transmission lines on Adams Road. So it kind of makes ditching not a possibility, or at least not ditching on the city property. We are looking at installing another kind of smaller culvert in that area to run along where the ditch would be. But yeah, I mean, it's a tough area just topography wise, and I know they got some, 2-3+ inch rains in a short duration this year that kind of really brought that area, I think, more to our attention. I can't sit here and say it's not going to happen again with improvements that were put in, but I would say it should be an improvement, maybe not as much of an improvement that we're hoping to get yet. I think there's still other things that we can explore to improve that, but certainly that isn't going to be a silver bullet solution.
Any other questions for Ben?
I have one question. So I love the idea that you brought, Ben. It feels very like symbiotic between like the city and the rural community in Fitchburg to me. I'm wondering, like, do you have any idea, like mathematically, which is not my strong suit, how many acres you would need of land to spread this sediment from dredging one pond, for example?
Sure. So, and again, this is a thing that's going to vary quite a bit on the pond that's being dredged. If it were dredging McKee Farms Park Pond, you might need several acres. And I guess that's another question I would have for you folks. How thick do you want to put it on there? I'm not sure. So if you can put it on real thick, maybe you can use less. If you're trying to just kind of skim it on, then you would need more. Certainly there are absolutely ponds in Fitchburg that will be dredged that you could just do like a test area if someone wanted to, maybe I don't know, it makes sense, a quarter acre, maybe that's too small, half acre, something that, certainly could be worked out, but, that might be a good idea too, just testing it, seeing if anyone wants to just try a small area and see how it works for them.
Mm-hmm. That's right. I guess where I was going to go to is like 10 cubic feet of material removed. What was your envisionment for the square footage that you would need to spread 10 cubic feet of material, and then how do you spread it? This is pond muck. It's a pretty slimy, thick, solid substance. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I had said a manure spreader, but I don't know that would handle it.
You're going to have to liquefy it.
Some sort of applicator.
Yeah, and I wish I had the answers. I think those are kind of the details I'd hope to now figure out more.
Ben, one of the resources you may want to talk to, maybe you have already, Dane County did some of the removal of a similar product from the Yahara watershed.
Yep.
And I don't know what they did with it. I know they let it dry in a certain area. What they did with it after that, I don't know. But they probably have some suggestions or data on that may help you.
Well, excellent, thank you.
Yeah, I would also say if it's more liquid, metric roll.
Yeah.
Usually
do they
knifes
subcontract?
Knifes it in.
Yeah.
Application like what they do.
Madison, Metric
Sure.
Grow.
Sure.
I don't know if they subcontract things outside of their own sludge.
They do not. They don't.
Okay, they don't.
But a similar product could be, or similar machine could be used.
I do think that the biggest concern is going to be like the PFAS content of the.
Oh yeah, I
of
mean,
the,
for sure.
Yeah, try the cost to separate that out.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and
That's
I worry about
basically
what
impossible.
I worry about
unfortunately.
what Dane County Land and Water Conservation what their input would be anywhere within the Yahara watershed. I don't. It could be wonderful. I just don't know.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Could that be another resource to touch base with also? Ben, while you're here on that subject, it's the Burn Road solar fields are just about done. And the solar company did agree early on, when I was involved with it, to pay for cleaning of that, reshaping of that ditch. And that has not been done. It needs to be done culvert to culvert, because next spring you're going to have water right back out on the road, and you got a neighbor across the street that is not real friendly towards that happening again.
Yep, so
So
I am aware of that, and that has been made a condition of their erosion control permit. It won't get closed out until it's done, and they're going to be basically on the hook for doing inspections every week until it gets done. I don't know how much the city is really going to be able to get them to dig the ditch deeper than what it was. It's probably going to be more of restoring to previous or existing condition prior to their project. I know a lot of gravel and other stuff washed in there, and certainly that they cleaned out some of it. They're not done with it. But yeah, I don't know that we can make them basically redo the ditch in a much larger geometry. I think if we wanted to do that, that would probably have to be done by city staff or contracted. And just the reason for that is luckily we had really great pictures of the ditch just before the project started, so we know exactly what it looked like. I just don't know that we can require them to put something back that was, greater than what was there before.
I feel you can, because they created a problem. In order to solve that problem, that ditch needs to be reshaped from culvert to culvert. It's not that much distance, but we're in the middle of November. And I will guarantee you, if we have a wet spring, you will have the neighbors flooded out again, and they will not be happy. Because I know they've been up and talked to the solar farm people. So, and it may be too late to do it this year, which is quite unfortunate, because you flood out the neighbors. That's going to be, it won't be pretty, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, and I will say, and I've been at that site a few times, especially earlier this year when we were having those heavier events. They did make some changes to their site to get water to flow more on their site before getting into the ditch. Should help a little bit, but we'll see what we can do about.
Well, I'm very familiar with what they did, because I was part of that decision of what they did.
So you saw then they kind of changed the tracking pad.
And I was part of, some of my suggestions were used, but that ditch out in front needs to be reshaped. Like I say, culvert to culvert, it's not that far. And the city can certainly share in that, because we have the equipment to do it. And we have pretty darn good equipment to do that. And with the machines that we have, and we've done it for years. So I think it probably needs to be done yet this year, but I don't know that we have the time to do it yet this year. But I'll guarantee you, if we don't do something, your phone will be.
I know it. Yep.
Be a busy phone.
Hey Ben, when you converse with them, can you include me? Because I'm sure if we don't do something, my phone will also be a busy phone.
Sure, absolutely.
As expected.
Yep, I know mine will be also. So, but we've got the equipment to do it, and if we have to share a little bit of that cost, well,
Right, I agree. It's not like we're asking a lot here.
Yeah, well, and they agreed. They agreed to reshape that ditch, and they agreed that when I was down there, this guy was reshaped, and they agreed to that. They agreed to pay for that. So that's an opportunity we don't want to let go.
It should be in the conditions, probably, too, that they.
Well, it should be left in a better condition than it was. So anyway, I appreciate it if you could look into that.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, Ben, thank you very much for coming
thank you
in.
all. Appreciate the help on this, and I'm sure we'll be in touch just with some updates regarding this in the future.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
Deanna, item D, comprehensive plan discussion.
Yes, so the last time we met, I introduced to you all that the planning department is working on putting an RFP together for updating our comprehensive plan. And one of the things that thank you. I'll start that over. Last time we met, staff introduced to you that we are working on an RFP for the comprehensive plan.
And what is an RFP?
Very good. RFP is a request for proposals. It is a document that we share as widely as possible, and that various consultants will reply to that request for proposals with proposals to perform the work outlined in that request for proposals. So we're basically saying, in a document, this is what we want to happen. We go out to the consultant community, different engineering firms, planning firms, and say, provide us a proposal. How much money and time is it going to cost to do what we're asking? Does that kind of make sense? Mm-hmm. So as part of this process, staff's been thinking really closely about what kinds of information we need, what kinds of data we need to collect, who do we need to talk to, what this process kind of looks like in terms of data collection, community engagement, and from my perspective of being the staff assigned to this committee, I wanted to make sure that we at least touched on some issues that could be important going forward in the comprehensive plan process. So I have put together just some discussion points. It's not a list of questions that need particular answers or answers right now, but thinking through these kinds of ideas, I had hoped it would help staff solidify a little bit more about the data collection, the community engagement process that we might need to do as we go through the comprehensive plan process. So just discussion points. Like I said, we don't have to have answers tonight, and we might continue to work through some of these ideas going forward. But my first question was, how is agriculture changing in Fitchburg? So I was specifically looking at what are the social economic changes that are happening in our rural areas? Are we seeing an increasing number of businesses or non-conforming uses? And maybe I'll just stop there and to see if anyone has some thoughts or comments.
Did we consider the urban property as a conforming use on the corner of M and Burn?
It is technically not a conforming use right now.
The wood chipping. I forgot about that.
It is technically not a conforming use. We have kind of got to an agreement with Urban that if the materials that they're producing, they've assured me that the materials that they are producing on that site will be used for agricultural purposes on their own fields. And so that's where we left it. But forestry products is not a permitted use under AX.
Do we, that only came to mind because of proximity to it, but do we see things like that happening throughout Fitchburg on a fairly regular, semi or even quasi-regular basis?
I don't know that particular use I'm familiar with, but I'm coming to you all as the specialists here.
I just, for clarification, I haven't been that far south lately. What's how's the land being used right now, or what's the?
The Urbans have a tree trimming, tree removal company, and they're processing some of the materials from that business.
Wood chips.
In the mulch.
Mulch, that's the word.
Yes. So we did come to an agreement that sales of mulch was not possible on the property.
Oh,
So that's timber related?
It is.
so when they drive out of the driveway, they can sell it then? Just can't sell it from the property?
Well, it's a business use that is not a permitted business use.
Okay, I forgot about that, totally. I don't even know what to do with
It's an
that.
outside company that's doing it. It'd be dirt, no? It's
No,
a private.
it's their processing on the property.
So they own the property and they're processing some of their own material.
So possibly bringing in other material.
Yeah, it's. I mean, that site, their business, like Deanna mentioned, is tree removal, tree trimming, and some of that is for the city, some of it is for private properties.
They do a lot of municipal work.
But
Right.
a lot of that
Economic
wood is brought
changes.
to that parcel and then shredded for mulch purposes or whatever. And what they do with it, I don't know, and that's not really my intent. Specifying their use isn't really my intent. It was more, what are we looking for, Deanna, in like non-conforming uses, business uses, or like residences that don't meet parcel size requirements?
No, what I was just wondering is if you all had thoughts. I was referring to non-conforming more and trying to understand any of the social economic changes in the rural areas. And I would see where I was going with the non-conforming piece is businesses popping up in some parts of the rural areas as an indicator of the social and economic changes.
Yeah, I would see that it could be a social. I mean, we're claiming to be the tree capital of the world, planting more trees, growing more trees in Fitchburg. That requires a lot of maintaining those trees, and I would think that could be a business that someone within the city limits could take economic advantage of.
I guess to bring it a little bit more north for you, I think of in 2023, or maybe you call it 2022, we had a seed plant turn into a subdivision. That to me screams agricultural use.
It's still up.
Hartung?
Yeah.
Oh, that.
The property, the Hartung property as a whole, though, is now, what is that, Pleasure Drive? No.
Yeah, well, the Hartung, the business itself is 100% functional.
Oh, yeah.
They are
Still there.
So that is the that land that they're talking, where you're seeing, that's been zoned for years to what it was. So we've known that was going to be coming out of agriculture.
That was in the McGaw neighborhood plan,
Yeah.
probably 2010.
Yeah.
Not that it's not a conforming use, just that we can see a very, very fundamental agricultural business having the city grow around it.
Oh, that's absolutely right.
Yeah.
I mean, that is going to happen. There's no question about that. We're next to a huge metropolitan area, but I think what Deanna is driving at is not to look at individual deals. Yes, the wood business is something to talk about, but I think what she's asking is the entire overall look of Fitchburg area.
How is it changed?
And
The rural area.
The rural area. And we, first of all, we're a minimum livestock, very minimum livestock. There's only a couple dairy farms where there were, as we all know, we flourished them in 25, 30 years ago. So that is changing, that's changed the economic and social look of Fitchburg. And that's going to change. The other thing from the economic standpoint is land ownership working it. Over half of the farms in Fitchburg, the people that they're rented. In other words, the landowner is not running the farm, he's renting it out. That is an economic change. Those
Is that
people
because
are
he's
working
old?
somebody else.
Is that because he's old?
In some cases.
It could be old, yes.
Tired.
They retired.
I think you have to juxtapose that to the national average.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
question about it. No question about it.
And I don't know that it's not so much, where this is playing into is the future vision of our rural areas. That's where all of this is heading. That's what we do in the comp plan is really draw out the future vision. So understanding those social economic changes are just very important in this process.
So in picking up to what you said, which was my question, is it becoming, even for those farms that are rented out, is it rented out to individuals that live there and farm it, or is a lot of our ag land going to large companies? Are we going to have?
There's this huge shift in agriculture, and it's like agriculture across the board. So like if it's dairy farms or crop farms, it's either get beef farms, go big or get out, right?
Right.
So it's just like go big or get out is like a staple term that I will use to describe my view of. Obviously, I'm a fifth generation on a farm.
Is it often by businesses then?
It's
Not
by like a so me, for example, that went out with my husband and a few staff and bought a huge old combine and some grain bins and just went at this business of custom farming, essentially. So that's how you get like these big pieces of equipment. Where the small farm, which I'm proud we're still doing it small in Fitchburg, is not a common, but we're young and we have labor. Like we're labor.
Yeah, in Fitchburg, if you look at the renters, there's only 3, maybe 4 key renters. I mean, and these renters are renting hundreds of acres, thousands of acres.
And they're businesses,
And
they're not
but they
individuals.
also are in their whole operation. We have one that is operating with close to something like 11,000 acres, and the acreage in Fitchburg is part of his big operation. He's in the Brooklyn area.
There's individuals, but they have staff.
Yeah, and so that's the footprint of what we're seeing right now in Fitchburg. I don't see that changing. Now, I think that again, when we talk about the age type of deal, if we look at any young farmers in the area, any farm that are currently, there's only maybe 1 or 2 that would fall into the category of farming the way we think it is, because they're going to take the farm over. That isn't prevalent in Fitchburg. And so if you look at where we're headed with it, I look for it to stay the same. The economic impact, what we are going to see out here is, and we're starting to see it, we're going to see small plots. We've got sweet corn vendors, or landowners that have plots of sweet corn. We've got, they're going to have other produce. I see that coming more prevalent in the rural area as far as an economic driver for that.
You're talking like farm co-ops?
No, I'm talking
like farm
about
stands.
farm stands. Yeah, that there's a couple that have.
I guess.
That would be, the sweet corn part of it would be, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a for a co-op is more, you pay so much to join the co-op.
Oh,
and
yeah.
There's a different name for that.
Oregon
That's-
has that. It's like
that's,
a CSA.
CSA.
CSA, not
Okay.
a co-op, it's a CSA.
I
That
think
more
that-
better describes it.
Right.
I think you're touching on something extraordinary there in that I don't know if we have a zoning classification that will aid in dividing 100-acre farms into smaller, more approachable, achievable farmsteads for people. I mean, if
You mean a farmette?
For
farmettes.
Farmette.
Yeah, I mean, our small lot ag prohibits a home.
That's one of her questions.
Yeah. So I look and I wonder, if you had 80 acres and you wanted it to retain farm usage, agricultural usage, without it going to a mega farm or
An apartment.
building,
Building.
how do you ensure that rural Fitchburg does have the opportunity to stay rural, but still give somebody the ability to have a small flock of chickens and
Yeah.
goats and
My neighbors
sweet
have
corns
that.
and
Those are my neighbors, literally across the road
Yep,
from me.
Yep.
Well, I think with, you're wondering how we can move forward and continue to preserve smaller parcels, like to bring back the family farm atmosphere.
You gotta have some
I
kids.
think we have, I don't know if you're ever gonna see it come back, but you have Oregon FFA, Verona FFA, I think we just gotta reach out to the younger generation and look at if there's interest in that. I don't know if Madison has any kind of agricultural.
But if there's not a zoning allowance for it, how can you?
Right.
You can have the desire all day long, but you don't have the ability.
Right. I don't know if there's a connection there.
I just think
that
it's
needs to be-
impossible to purchase farmland, pay the taxes on farmland, put it in corn and soybeans, and make enough money to survive on farmland. And so we talk about economics. It's not like you leave your house and you go to work and you hope the beans grow. And then you come back in a few months and pray you break even.
It's true, buying equipment and putting
Paying
the hard
taxes,
work in
buying
it
the
and all
land,
that.
the
It's
equipment,
like
the
you have to go to-
breakdowns.
You have to go to town to get another job in order to pay for it all.
You have to.
Yeah, 2 jobs.
Well, and
Right.
in some cases, what you're seeing, and yes, stuff is rented, but we have several farms where the owner of the land is buying the seed
Yep.
and buying the fertilizer, and they're hiring a big operator to come in.
Yes.
Because the little guy can't afford the price of
The
that
combine,
equipment.
that's
But
$350,000.
I can think of at least 5 off the top of my head, me being one of them, is where we own the crop and we take the risk. So we just pay we help the bigger guy make his payments on the equipment by hiring him to do our work. But the crop is still ours. And another thing that when we speak of farms, we have to realize that just because we're down to a couple dairy farms, and one does not have a labor issue. The state farm doesn't have a labor
Right,
issue. They have plenty of
They're-
help.
They're in good shape.
But just because you're not dairy doesn't mean you aren't a farm. You've got a huge beef farm right on Irish Lane. That's they sell their beef. That's one of their main income producers. And so we have to remember that just because the dairy is down doesn't mean that they aren't farms.
There's some winning
But
barrel
there's
horses.
another piece to this which has always puzzled me. We are very close to one of the best agricultural campuses in the world, and we've never seized that opportunity. If you were going to get a young farmer to come and farm, one of their fears, and one of their bankers' fears, is because the city of Fitchburg has not committed to long-term agriculture. The development is as one of the former mayors said in the Greenfield neighborhood meetings, what you feel is the use of the ag land is just there until it gets used for residential. And that was his view for the whole piece. That was his view. And so we've never really committed that we never drew the line in the sand saying that this is never going to develop, we're going to make it agriculture, and we're going to go to the university and partner with them and bring a young farmer in. We've never done that. And the city has been resistant. I pushed for that for years, and the city has just never been willing to do that. And I can go to the Department of Agriculture up there and talk to them, and they aren't going to listen to me at all. Nicole or the mayor, as an alderperson or the mayor, would be a very different conversation.
And I think it's an interesting point you bring up of like, we live near the largest university in our state, and a very innovative university when it comes to agriculture. And is there also like a line in between, right? We don't say we're going to sell all of our farmland and leave us with nothing that kind of is the roots of who we are in Fitchburg. And we don't promise that nothing will ever change. But there's not the in-between happening that you're referring to, Mark, of like, are we going and making a concerted effort to say, hey, we really, as a city, part of our identity is that we're a rural and urban mixed area. And so we want to make an effort, and maybe that's what happens as part of the CIP. I don't know if the CIP is the right place for it to live, but like, I'm super interested in what you're bringing up in terms of how do we partner with somebody at UW to say, like, what's the future of farming communities look like? Like, in all of the research that you're doing, how do rural and urban mixed cities cohabitate while still respecting different zones? How do you set those up? Like, I think that would be super interesting, and saying, and draw us an economic plan that makes this feasible for both the city and the residents, instead of saying, we promise this land will never ever change, and we promise we're going to sell this land to the highest bidder. There's got to be like an effort in the middle that states like, could we make this, and I'm probably oversimplifying an incredibly complex formula, because math and accounting is also not my strong suit. But I think it's a really fair statement for you to make in terms of like, are we really using all the resources in our community that are available to us?
To this point, we never have.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And there's another player in that. If we were going to do that, there's another player we have to work with, and that's the banking community. Because the banking community is not going to loan me $5 or $10 million to create a farmstead in somewhere.
And that's
in
where you're
Fitchburg.
Feeling that commitment.
That's where the commitment issue is, because the bankers are going to say, well, not here.
You're developing.
In Marathon County, maybe, but not here.
But are there people that want to be future farmers? I mean, are you
absolutely.
looking to create
Huge
incentives, or everything that Nicole said, but you don't? But there may not be a people market for it. I don't know what I'm asking.
So like in my circle, I think Adam's a perfect example. Is like, here's a guy that was working a job, making some money, and was able to buy some farmland, right? I mean, you didn't grow up as a farmer. Am I wrong? So like, there is a need, but it's an economic like barrier, right? Like, how does someone my age go to the bank and say, I found this beautiful piece of farmland in Fitchburg, I need $3 million? So there's like
That's a tough sell.
It's a tough sell. Like, there's the want is there. Trust me, I'm very well aware the want is there. Like, it's kind of a dream life if you can make money.
But I had heard that, I thought some longtime farm, family farms in Fitchburg, sorry, used to live in McFarland. In Fitchburg, the kids are not interested in continuing the family farming. So that's why I'm asking the question.
In some cases, that's true.
Yeah.
But University of River Falls has a program, it's called a Young Farmer Program, where they match a retiring farmer with a young farm family. Guess what? They're not interested in coming to Fitchburg because there's no commitment.
Here in Fitchburg, land values would be, to a commercial developer, would be far in excess of a value that a child could grow into and profit or yield from the agricultural use. And so I don't see that being an option in a sort of sub-metropolitan area or a desire. My daughter doesn't want anything to do with the farm other than coming around about this time of year and helping kill the deer. And that's her agricultural experience. But you're right. I did not grow up on a farm. All of our land has always been rented out. So the doing was never part of my life, and I wanted that. Pipe dream and living that and loving it. But it doesn't make a lot of money. It doesn't support a lifestyle. I don't know how it would be possible. I have 108 acres is the size of my farm, and that does not generate enough revenue to have a comfortable life.
Well, you have solar now.
Even with that. Why
helps,
I do?
though.
Yeah.
It helps.
Like I said, I'll go back to the River Falls program. They have a waiting list of people that are to be placed. And a young couple that I knew, they were placed in. I talked to them about coming to Fitchburg, and the program wasn't interested in that because it wasn't long-term, and that was directly what I was told. But they placed them in Iowa County.
Of course.
Yeah.
Where there's still dairy farms. My father-in-law's.
I think it's an interesting balance of also understanding the socioeconomics of Dane County and where we are, right? Like it's the fastest growing county in the state. We're one of the fastest growing cities in that fastest growing county. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't prioritize the investment in our rural community. And I think it's just how do we do that while still being able to capture some of the, fiscal opportunities, like Madison the Madison area is expected to grow X amount by 2030. The number keeps going up and up and up.
Let them.
And how do we balance Fitchburg not being Madison, right? To your point, right? How do you do that? And it's like a very fine line. So I think it's a really fair point
So farmland preservation.
Yep, absolutely. And people love living in Fitchburg because, like, I'm from Texas. I had woods next to my house growing up, right? Like, I lived in a very wooded, farmed, non-developed area. That's why I moved to Fitchburg, because I liked the feel of Fitchburg, right? And so how do you respect those two things, I think is a really fair point. And I think bringing an outside perspective in, like, I love the idea of working with someone at the UW and asking around City Hall, like, hey, have we done that? Mark, to your point, you don't feel like we've really exhausted that talent that we have so close to us. And I think it's a really good idea to bring in some outside perspective.
Well, another area that's very close to us did embrace the agriculture, and that's Town of Dunn. And you're not seeing any development pressure on them, and none of the people that are forcing us or suggesting that we build more houses are even interested in going and talking to them.
Well,
that's
I
a
lived
different
in the town
market.
of Dunn, and I think you don't see development pressure
not
because they have the
comparable.
purchase of development rights.
That's right. And we
So
looked
without
at that.
you'd probably.
We looked at that when
Yeah.
we became a city. I was part of that group, and we looked at that.
But I
We
don't
didn't go
think
that route because we
think-
won a lawsuit.
I'm not sure you can compare the town of Dunn, and it's surrounded for dozens of miles by entire agricultural use. There's no real development pressure in the town of Dunn comparative to an adjacent city to Madison. They're not under the same stress. It's not entirely just that the land value isn't there. There's not the school districts that we have. There's not the metropolitan uses and park systems or any of that in Dunn. But I like your idea of engaging the university in whatever capacity they may be able to assist in.
I mean, their agriculture program is enormous. There's got to be such a dream there, like a pipe dream, right? Like there's so many students, bright minds there studying this. Like the need is there. It's there. How do they access it?
Adam, to address your issue, they don't have the development pressure because of the development rates that
They're
Shelley just
gone.
talked
They've
about.
sold them off.
So so there's the area to the north and around McFarland where they cannot, because those development rights are gone. They're not. It's not even a possibility. So they've made the commitment to keep it rural. We have not done that.
How can we do that?
They did that at a time that would be kind of like Fitchburg doing the exact same thing 50 plus years ago.
Oh, it wasn't 50 years ago, but it was 40 years ago. We talked about it in a meeting hall similar to this, because I was there. So yeah, I don't know if we've helped you at all, Deanna, or just made it even worse. I'm not sure.
Well, I think there's a lot of discussion that we'll continue to have, but this is good.
I have one last thought. We talk about our commitment to agriculture. Does not our comprehensive plan address that?
Yes, the comprehensive plan establishes a commitment to agriculture.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So if that's the case, and I think what we're looking at in the next few months here is to look at the comprehensive plan, and we as agricultural community certainly have an opportunity to have input into that.
Mm-hmm.
But
certainly.
Basically, the plan is in place to preserve cropland, and that's been looked at for a long time.
Mm-hmm. So we don't need any of this?
It has, and Roger, you worked on and you got to help me, Deanna. There's a book that we have, and I have a copy of it.
Oh yeah.
There's the agricultural plan.
It's a book that's, and
multiple pages.
When I picked
You
up my
have that.
folder, it was right on top of that book, and I didn't grab the book and bring it with me. But if anybody from the committee has not seen that book, I'll try to bring it to one of our next meetings, because it addresses some of the agriculture, the amount of money that the agriculture produces. And Roger, you were part of that.
Oh, yeah.
And you were part of those equations that put those numbers together. But it's a very interesting book, and it was developed, or that book was created by the city.
Yeah, the only thing I can think is that you're referring to is the agricultural plan that Wade Thompson did.
No, this is like a book.
No, I'll bring the book. It's
many pages thick.
Okay.
It's fairly thick. Yeah. It's I'll bring it. So.
Okay.
So, but it details some of the farms, and it's got some years on it now. It's a few years old, but anyway.
Okay.
I have one question about the UW has quite a few acres out there on the west
Pleasant View
side of Middleton. Yeah, Pleasant View. A lot of that is research. And there's more than just some typical research there too. They also have some private businesses, I believe, that do things like with,
They partner with.
Yeah, partner with.
They partner with UW. Yes, that's true.
What are we trying
so maybe
to
they're
gather
looking
from these questions?
for opportunities there
What are we trying to
for an
gather
expansion.
from these questions? I just don't understand.
Because they're close.
There was a proposal
What does it
a few
matter?
years
It's
back
already in the
for
plan.
the
What
alt
is that?
property
Okay.
To move the university farms out there. And that did not come to volition, so.
The UW wasn't comfortable with moving out.
There was some commitments that had to be made, and they weren't forthcoming.
Well, I still think it's a good idea to revisit communication with them, you know, in that regards. And
I would agree.
Yeah.
Deanna, anything else for us? You have any announcements or?
Yeah, if I could just make a mention, staff, of course, continues to work through the neighborhood plans. Upcoming, December 3rd at 5 o'clock is the Greenfield Steering Committee. So that's December 3rd at 5 o'clock for the Greenfield Steering Committee.
Is that still a thing, or did that just get kind of get voted down?
Nope, it's
still a thing.
It has not been voted down yet.
Okay, I'm surprised it's even still a thing, honestly, but I'm a little out of the loop.
December 11th is the South Stoner Prairie Neighborhood Steering Committee meeting. And then December 18th is the South Stoner Prairie Neighborhood Meeting Open House. So that will wrap up our neighborhood planning activities for this year.
Are the steering committees on FACTv? But not the neighborhood open houses?
The open houses, if there's a presentation, we usually do put those up on FACTv.
Deanna, you mentioned the 18th is the Stoner Prairie
Open house.
Open house. Do you have one set for Greenfield yet?
Not this year. We're looking at early January for the open house, but the date has not been finalized.
Okay, thank you very much.
That is all that I have, Chair.
Okay, very good. Anybody else has any conversations? Okay, with that, we'll move to item 8, which is adjournment. Could I have a motion, please?
So I'll make a motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I'm going to give you the second.
We're adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
This is slow.